What's going on, everyone? Zane here. Got another episode of Everything Vive for you. Thank you for tuning in. Today we have another great interview. This one is with Nick Fajt from Against Grav, and they are the team that brought you Rec Room. And if you haven't played this game yet, get it right now. I mean, pause the podcast, go grab it. It's free, and it's probably one of the best things that you'll play on the Vive. And if you're an Oculus user, you'll be able to play it on the Oculus Touch next week. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Nick, how's it going, man?
Oh, not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course, man. We are so excited for this. We've been really looking forward to it. Ronnie and I are both here. Ronnie, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So, Nick, Rec Room. Probably one of the coolest games I've played so far. I have no words for it, but I should be asking questions, so let me start with this one. What was the inspiration, man? Tell me more about the game, how it came about. I have plenty more questions, but figure I want to put the ball in your court and just hear how this whole thing came about, man.
Sure. So I think we were really looking at VR, and we saw it as, an entirely new computing platform and potentially, the next internet-sized opportunity. And we felt like the thing that made it really special was this feeling of social presence that you could have. In VR, you could feel like you were in the same room with someone else who was in another country or on another continent. And we were really interested in exploring that concept. We felt like, if you look back, the internet has done some tremendous things and how it lets us communicate with people from around the world. But being in a room with 8 other people from around the globe is still a really novel experience. It's something you'd only really have the opportunity to do if, you're on the International Space Station or at the Olympics, in real life. And we wanted to try and create that really novel experience, but using the power of VR. And we were hoping to do it in a way that was both fun and approachable. And I think that's the way that we slowly iterated towards Rec Room. We wanted to create something that was like an active social game in VR that allowed you to compete with folks from all around the world.
Well, you know what? You guys accomplished that and more. I have to say, and I'll stop brown nosing, but I have to say, because this is probably the first multiplayer experience on VR and the Vive that I came across where it's so casual. And Ronnie and I were actually talking about that beforehand where, I think at the time, Hover Junkers was a big multiplayer game when I first got my Vive a couple months back. And all these other multiplayer games that have come out since, a lot of them are, you're in the game or you're not. There's no lobby area as opposed to where Rec Room, where people just kind of hang out and you don't have to do anything. There's no game to play and you can literally just talk and have a conversation with people as if you're there. And I feel like that has actually really built up the community quite well. We've connected with quite a few people ourselves. And so, kudos to you on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a really interesting experience just to see how people use Rec Room. I mean, every day we see people using it for ways we had never really thought about. And so it's just really exciting to see people use it for, just sort of generic communications, use it to meet new people. Some people are going in there and using it to learn new languages. It's just really exciting to see people using it for so many different purposes.
Yeah. Hi, Nick. Along those same lines, I was just kind of curious, when, trying to facilitate people in their interactions and communications with other players in the shared spaces like the locker room. What is your thought process as a developer in trying to, provide players with tools that can maybe help them with some of those interactions? For example, we're in there earlier, playing around with boom boxes and video cameras and all sorts of, funny props. What's some of the thought process that goes behind, that went behind creating some of those tools? And if you could talk about, some interesting and unexpected ways that people have interacted with those tools.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think for us, we sort of looked at them as a social lubricant. In many ways.
I love that term. Great.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I think in many ways, for a social experience on the broader web, generally people are having this experience with people that they know in the real world. It's from your Facebook friends list. For VR, that's tough to do right now because, generally most people don't have 25 friends with a Vive. It's mostly strangers interacting with other strangers. So we felt like we needed to add some tools to help people sort of break the ice. And that was kind of how we looked at a lot of those tools, was how could people kind of get over, the social anxiety of going up and talking to a totally new person. And we felt like the tools added an element of like whimsy and fun and approachability that would help people kind of have these unexpected interactions together. And I think we've definitely seen some very interesting behavior in that. I think some of the most fun ones I've seen were the basketball and the basketball hoop. We walked in the other day and people were playing horse with it, which was pretty amusing. We've seen people do all sorts of crazy, weird things with the darts. The darts have some very strange behaviors that the users love to manipulate and exploit. And yeah, I think a lot of people just feel very comfortable being goofy and dancing around and just having an overall good time. It just doesn't seem like people are, extremely self-conscious in this mode. And I think it allows for some really special social interactions to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've experienced it myself, and I've also experienced it in watching, other videos on YouTube and various video game websites where people, kind of take on their own personality within the game and kind of, make things pretty interesting for everybody else. Let's just put it that way. So
yeah, I think just the fact that, like I was saying earlier, there's no agenda and people can really just hang out, like virtually hang out, I think allows that level of comfort to be able to just come out and just kind of, be yourself, explore. And that's I think awesome for VR right now.
Yeah, kind of along those same lines too. I wanted to see if you had any thoughts on, what your role or what, in creating those tools and letting people kind of behave the way they want to behave. Is there anything that, that you guys have to worry about as developers to make sure that people are kind of, respecting each other and engaging in behavior that's acceptable? Or like, have there been any kind of issues like that you're able to speak about? Or
I can say that we take the issue of harassment in VR, very, very seriously. It's definitely been an area that we focus on, both in how we try and incentivize behavior, the way we build our code of conduct, and then we're constantly shipping new features to try and help people manage their experience in Rec Room. We have tools like personal bubbles. We have a mode that allows you to basically ghost out nearby users if you're feeling harassed.
Yeah, I saw that. That's awesome.
Yeah, the ability to vote to kick, disruptive users from a particular room. Online harassment. I mean, if you look at the broader internet, it's everywhere, and the internet has been with us for many, many years, and it's an issue that we're constantly trying to corral on the broader internet. And VR is very new, and I think the potential for VR harassment is high. And so it's an issue that we take really seriously, and it's an issue that we try and ship features and mechanisms to try and control that as much as we can, because we want the experience to remain positive, happy, friendly, fun. And I think we're still learning along with everybody else, just sort of what those tools look like and how do you enforce kind of like a really great code of conduct where everyone's being excellent to everyone else. Like that's really our goal is just everybody to go in there and have a good time.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, we've been following the updates like with the ghost mode. I thought that was great, and it seems like the community has been very responsive and helpful in terms of just letting you guys know how that stuff is playing out. So that's really great to see.
Yeah, I think our community is great. They're very vocal, and they provide us with a tremendous amount of suggestions, and we really welcome and value that. Like that's really a huge area where we're drawing inspiration from, is suggestions that we get from the community, either through Reddit or the Steam discussion forums, or just emails directly to us.
No, for sure. Well, not to put any pressure on you guys, but I feel like you're the first ones to really go through this, just because, VR is, I guess, newer in a sense where people are experiencing at this level or like in their homes. And so, issues like whatever type of harassment, yeah, they've been around for a while, but in the vein of them being as immersive as VR is, there's a lot of precedents being set. There's a lot of things, situations that come up that have never come up before. So, kudos to tackling them the way that you guys have done it so far. And hopefully, that the community stays positive like it has been.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's get away from the serious stuff for a little bit. I wanted to ask more about you. I know there's a team behind it, but, what was your role in developing and, I guess, I don't know if you want to give us your unique perspective in being part of the Rec Room team.
Yeah. So, first we have a very talented team of, developers, designers, artists. I'm actually not one of any of those things. I've probably played more role on the organizing side than anything else. And, I think before this, a lot of us had experience shipping console and PC games. We've all been in the game space for a while. And a few of us had previously worked on a project at Microsoft called HoloLens. So that was kind of where we were making some apps previously. So I think we had a bit of experience building games and apps for these head-mounted displays. Obviously, HoloLens is very different than the Vive, but some of the same principles we were able to learn from and draw from that previous experience.
Yeah, I guess just touching on that for a moment, if you could kind of explain a little bit some of the differences in your experience between developing AR titles versus VR titles, and kind of what some of the potentials for each platforms are, where they differ, where they're kind of similar, maybe where they'd potentially merge at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely of the mind that I think they're eventually going to merge. I think someday we'll all be wearing our Warby Parker glasses that are capable of a no compromise AR VR experience. So from a development standpoint, I think what you're seeing right now is VR is trending really heavily towards games and entertainment, and augmented reality is tending to trend a little bit more towards general purpose or like enterprise computing. Mm-hmm. That's the trend that I see right now, and I think augmented reality has some really tremendous potential in that space. As for developing content for it, I think I would say one of the biggest differences is in augmented reality you cannot control the environment that you're in. And in virtual reality, you have absolute control over the environment. And, in some ways as a developer, having absolute control over the environment, like, the actual room that you're standing in, it gives you a lot of control over the experience, but you might lose some serendipity. Mm-hmm. And with some of the games that I've seen in the augmented reality space, they really embrace, hey, this works in any room, and, you can move your furniture around and the gameplay is slightly different. That has a much higher hurdle for developers to create content that's compelling in all of these different environments, but it can create some really magical moments.
Yeah, it almost sounds like augmented reality development right now seems more procedural in what developers are able to create versus virtual reality, where you, because of the increased control over the environment, you're able to really kind of go wild and kind of, point the player in more directions that you kind of want things to steer. I don't know if does that sound accurate, or?
I think in many ways it is. I think, as an augmented reality developer, you need to be resilient against a lot of different cases, a lot of different room sizes, and a lot of different furniture configurations. And in VR, you don't. And I think in many VR apps, you also probably have a strong feeling of being cut off from the actual world. And so I think they have the potential to be less social. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we've taken a particular angle on that to try and connect you with other people. But in augmented reality, I think there's some really compelling social play opportunities as well. And I'm really interested to see what people do over the next couple of years in that space. I think we're seeing the very early elements of that with Pokemon Go. Whether people think that's augmented reality or not, it is creating some really interesting social interactions out in the world. And I think I find those very, very fascinating.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting that kind of, I mean, when you were talking, you kind of made me think of kind of, the difference in, a lot of virtual reality games that are multiplayer focused right now are like Rec Room and others where you're connecting players over the internet. There are a few games that kind of try to, bring kind of the local multiplayer aspect to virtual reality. And I feel like augmented reality, kind of, brings the potential to, or it provides more potential for bringing people, together that are in close proximity. But yeah, nonetheless, it's interesting to kind of see, what some of those differences are and how both of, how augmented reality and virtual reality are both progressing. So,
yeah, I mean, both I think have tremendous market opportunity, and it's really exciting for us to just have the opportunity to play with all of these new toys and create all of these new experiences. I mean, it's definitely a really magical time to be in this space.
Yeah. So while we're talking a little bit about some of the technical stuff, I thought maybe to circle back a little bit to Rec Room itself. One of the things that I think Rec Room does a great job of balancing is kind of, that trying to find that magical formula of where the physics are realistic enough to feel like you're really, grabbing onto objects and throwing them and playing around, but at the same time, not being frustrating and providing a sense of fun and engaging, engagement for players. So I didn't know if you could maybe talk a little bit about how your team tries to work on maybe tweaking some of those types of things, and also just in general, what it's like to kind of work on a game that has so many players involved with it on a daily basis and so much feedback.
Oh yeah. So on the physics side, I mean, I feel like we're really playing in a new medium, and there's a lot of really interesting opportunities and problems that arise when you look at networked multiplayer physics, where you're trying to have these very low latency interactions, but you're also trying to maintain this very approachable, very fun, very easy to use sort of skill set. For us, the principle that we kind of adhered to was, if there was an opportunity to make an interaction social, we wanted to, or if there was an opportunity to make an interaction physical, we wanted to do that. And so that's kind of the theory behind the fist bumps to party up. We originally had it as a menu item, and we were like, I'm standing right next to the person. Couldn't we just do something a little bit more interesting? And that's kind of what we've done for, we've added the ability to friend users in the game, so you can find them and invite them to rooms. And we made that a handshake. So, just trying to make those things physical. If a user sees an object, we wanted them to be able to pick it up. We wanted that object to interact the way they thought it would. So that's kind of the principled approach that we've taken. It is definitely, we're definitely getting lots of feedback on that every day, and there's more work to do. But for us, what we wanted was, very, very limited tutorials, very limited, FAQs, more, hey, I see an object, I know how to interact with it because I've had years and years of training in the real world of, this is how a dart works, or this is how a basketball works. And we just wanted to tap into that part of people's brains that just sort of like naturally process how objects work.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, I mean, along the same, we've appreciated a lot of the updates that you guys have added to the game, kind of tweaking the UIs and kind of, I mean, there's so many touches like that in Rec Room that are so well done. Like just one thing that comes to mind is, moving from activity to activity by looking at your watch and being able to, pretty easily go from sport to sport that way. I thought that was a really intuitive way, like you said, to for most players, especially that are comfortable with the Vive, these are all systems that they're very comfortable with. And I didn't have to, as soon as I was, trying to interact with those menus, I didn't really have to, stop to think about what I was doing. It was just all intuitive. So, so that stuff is really impressive.
Great to hear.
Yeah, I was gonna. Oh man, I had a thought. I don't know, Zane. If you have something, let me try to.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, paintball by far, I just gotta say, is probably the coolest shooting game out there right now. I mean, we were actually talking about this with people in the game earlier, and I played Onward, I played other games, and not to knock any of the other games, like they're all great in their own respect, but I think it just comes down also to the vibe of what Rec Room is, where paintball, the mechanics, the gameplay, everything, like it's probably one of the best experiences out there, and it's one of the first things that I show people when they're ready for teleportation. As soon as you introduce someone to VR, but like I said, I feel like it's really created that community around it where you have so many people who are kind of playing that. But getting to my question, I guess this is more specifically regarding the different games that you have around. What I guess for the team right now, because you have a great piece of software that's out there, a great application that people are using. How what is the decision making process like when saying like, hey, should we add another game versus refining the things that we have in there already, the activities that we have in there already, and where I guess not necessarily numbers wise, but what is the allocation of resources like? How do you guys kind of think about that stuff and plan overall for current where the current situation is?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I wish I could tell you, hey, we have this like really refined system where we make those decisions. I think so much of it is really driven by what we hear from the community. So for us, there's some amount of time that we spend making our current activities work better, work more smoothly, add more depth and more skill to them. And then there is a good amount of time that we spend exploring new activities as well. So I wouldn't say it's like one or the other. We kind of split our time across those two. But a huge portion of it is just really driven by our users and what do we think they're going to find compelling, and what do we think they're going to want to spend time doing. And I think the thing that we've seen with paintball in particular is if you can find an activity that's very easy to get into, like we see people pick it up pretty quickly, but it has a really nice skill curve. Like there are people who play paintball that, like when I go in and play paintball, I get beat up pretty badly. There's some really good players in there, and I think something that can have a skill curve like that seems to be that's really the sweet spot we're trying to find. Simple to pick up, but just really difficult to master. But you get that reward from feeling like your skill is increasing in the game. So we're trying to find more and more activities like that. And then in spaces where we have like paintball, we're trying to add more depth. Like we've added additional maps, we've added grenades, we've added shotguns. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to keep going down that route and just keep trying to add depth and variation on that moving forward. But we're also exploring other new activities that we think could have a similar like quick pick up and play, but deeper skill curve.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I could see how different users have different first thoughts and first priorities on what should be added and because we were talking to some people that seem to play paintball quite a bit, and all of their comments are like they love the game. It's their favorite thing. They are literally playing paintball every day, and their main concern was trying to find ways of kind of tracking their own stats because they're so good at the game, honestly.
Yeah, there's some really good players in there.
Yeah, so those were some of the feedback was, it'd be really cool if we could, track our stats a little bit more or this and that. So it's interesting that, that's something that a new player would never even think about when they're playing the game for the first time. So kind of balancing that out. But a new player
can go in and not have to think about that and be able to pick up the game quickly, which is what makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. And actually, on that note, my understanding is that you guys are gearing up for kind of a big change for Rec Room, and that is, making the game multi-platform. I don't know if you wanted. I mean, that in general, the trend in bringing a lot of these Vive games over to the Oculus and even PlayStation VR has gotten me super excited because, it's one thing. We have a lot of great people in the Vive community, but to be able to, create bridges and bring everybody into, the games that are on all of these different platforms, I think is super, super exciting. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I'm extremely excited for that as well. So next Tuesday we will be launching with the Oculus Touch. So anybody that has Oculus Touch will be able to play, and they'll be playing in the same community as all of the Vive players as well. And we've done, a lot of tuning to make sure that all the games are balanced and, all the games work really well on both platforms. I think the thing that we're really excited about is, VR is still it's still a small market. It's still an enthusiast market. And I think anything you can do to stitch these communities together and, help everybody get a better experience. We're really excited about that. At the end of the day, Rec Room is a better app the more people that are in it. And so we think being able to stitch together those two communities, we think that's a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, no, I've heard great things about, kind of the reverse situation when Eve Valkyrie moved over from being an Oculus exclusive to branching onto, the Vive and PlayStation VR. So, I think this is a super exciting development, and it'll be great to see a lot of new people getting to experience Rec Room for the first time. So
we're really excited about it. Yeah.
And I don't know if you can speak to some of the technical, concerns when making a game, be compatible cross-platform. Was it, particularly challenging to bring the game over to the Rift, or kind of what were some of the big, issues of concern when doing that work?
Yeah, I think when you're looking to enable crossplay, there's sort of three big buckets of challenge that you can sometimes run into. It's they're technical, there's balance, and then there's sort of bureaucratic. So from the technical standpoint, a lot of games will rely on APIs that are provided by the platform itself. Steam has a series of APIs that you can sort of rely on for things like matchmaking, just who's online, rich presence, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go crossplay, you can't have the Oculus calling those APIs. So you need to figure out some solution there, and it often involves you writing your own solutions. So I think that's sort of the technical challenge is you end up picking up, you have to write some platform elements to make it possible. Mm. From a balance perspective, and this is kind of the thing that you occasionally see with first-person shooters from the PC to the console, making sure that the game is balanced. I think generally when games allow PC players to play with console players, the console players get destroyed. Mm-hmm. And it's just because, the keyboard mouse input paradigm, it's tough to beat that. So for us, it was just going through and trying to figure out hey, how do we make these things balanced? They control slightly differently. But we think we ended up in a really good place. And then occasionally there are just bureaucratic challenges. Fortunately with Vive and Oculus, there were not any for us, but for some other platforms, they sort of have these terms of service where they don't want you to enable cross-platform. And we haven't run into that so far, but it has been a problem in the console space from time to time. Mm-hmm. We hope that the VR market doesn't trend in that direction, because we think, in these early days, getting everybody connected is really the way that we all win, is, growing the pie together.
No, for sure. I mean, it's good to see Vive and Oculus playing nice, especially for Rec Room, just because this is a game that really does build that community, and if you can build those bridges, like Ronnie was saying, across the platforms, and just make virtual reality something to be excited about. It's one of those, what is it, when rising tide raises all ships. The more people that get into VR, the better it is going to be for everyone involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess since we're on the topic of, upcoming changes and updates, I'm just curious, what's the long-term outlook for Rec Room, or where would you guys like to get this? I don't like to say, 5-year plan, but what as I'm sure your objectives have changed as you've gone along, but looking here now, I guess where's the long-term, or what is the long-term outlook for Rec Room? What would you like it to be in the most idealistic state, I guess?
In the most idealistic state. I mean, I think so much of what we're doing is very iterative and really following the breadcrumbs that are being laid by our community. I think in many ways we look at what we're doing as how can we be a heat-seeking missile for the desires of the people that play the game? Like, how can we provide them more of what they want? So my hope for the future is really that we're the default way that people go and interact with their friends in VR, or the default way that people go and meet new people in VR. And I think we have a really interesting opportunity to try and do that and stitch all of these disparate communities together. So that's kind of the route that I'm going. But I would say we're very open-minded to the road that we take to that area, where we really listen to our community and what they want. And how to achieve that goal.
That's a great answer. I'm sure many people will be happy to hear that. I have one question actually from Zhang Yi, since we were playing paintball with him earlier today. It sounds like you know who he is, but he was actually asking, and it got us thinking. His question, in I guess a very serious way, is why is the game free? And I mean, when we were talking, my first thought obviously is, you want to create the least amount of barriers to entry. But I figured I might as well ask you, since we got you on the phone here.
Why is the game free? For a social game in such a small community, I think we were really interested in just like, how do you bootstrap something like this? It's really hard to get a critical mass when there's such a small number of headsets out there. And so we just didn't want to put any barriers in front of users getting together and connecting with our app. In the future, we may add some in-app purchases or some opportunity for transactions, but our goal will always be to keep the game free and frictionless, to just get in and connect with people. I think that's really what our mission is to use VR to connect, friends and strangers alike. And I think if there's a paywall to get into there, we're not going to accomplish that mission. So it was actually a very easy choice for us to make.
Cool. Well, for anyone listening, you literally have no excuse. Go get the game right now if you don't have it, especially for anyone who's going to be coming through with the Oculus Touch next week. So I want to be respectful of your time. We just have a couple more questions. This next one is one this next one is one that we ask to all developers, and I feel like it usually gets a pretty unique response. So, it's a hypothetical. If you as a developer, you have a very unique perspective on where VR is and the platforms and things like that. So, if you were the CEO of HTC or Oculus, where would you want to focus your company's, time, energy, resources? Like, where do you think the next big innovation is going to be? Or, even just for you personally, like where would you want VR to be focused on, in the near future?
Sure. Very interesting question. I would say, I think they're focusing on the right areas right now. It's in the most, immediate terms, it's just getting the cost down, making the headset more approachable for the average consumer. The Vive and the Oculus, they're still an early adopter enthusiast device. They're expensive, and the average consumer, may not be able to set them up or use their existing computer for these things. So, when I look at the VR market, I see, hey, we've got these mobile headsets that are pretty approachable and relatively inexpensive, but they're very limited in terms of functionality. And on the high end, we've got these amazing headsets like the Vive and the Oculus, but they're just not quite ready for the average consumer in terms of both price and just, setup. And so what I think you're going to see is this kind of race to the middle, where the mobile headsets continue to develop more and more capabilities and functionalities. They're capable of just doing more. And then on the high end, I think you're going to see these high-end headsets like the Vive, develop inside-out tracking, go untethered, just come down in price. And I think what we're going to eventually end up with is, something that looks like a mobile headset that has kind of the capabilities of the Vive or the Oculus. Like 6 degrees of freedom on the headset tracking, 6 degrees of freedom in terms of input. And I think that's a really interesting device. And I think if it can be provided through mobile carriers, I think it becomes accessible to a whole new group of individuals, and it really just grows that entire audience. And I see HTC and Oculus focusing their time and energy on that, so we're excited about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you bring up a good point. It's really interesting to see all of the different platforms that are coming out, whether it's the mobile platforms coming out on Google Pixel and Samsung Gear VR, all the way up to the high-end systems like Oculus and HTC. So I'm really excited to see how that will all converge into something that makes it as easy as possible for people to get involved with VR, in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, whatever the time frame for that might be. So we got one more for you, and I guess this is more of just a shameless promotion, a time for you to plug anything that you want. I know it's more so it's more so for how can people connect with you? I know you guys are really active on Reddit, you're really active on the Steam discussion boards, but if there's another way, people who have feedback or want to send you guys gift baskets for the awesome job you've done, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? And just for any shameless plug you want to go, this is your moment to shine right here.
Great to hear. I mean, hey, I think for us, I just want everybody who plays the game to know, we are listening. So when people tweet at me or send me emails, or, just send emails through our website, info@againstgrav.com. I respond to almost all of those mails. I can tell you for sure that everyone on our team reads them, and we do have active discussions when we get suggestions from the community on Reddit or on the Steam forums. We really are engaged with users, and that's the number one thing that people can do to help us right now is if you have suggestions for the game, if you have ideas for creative features, feel free to reach out. You'd be surprised how often we'll get them into the game. And, if people want to get more involved than that, we are hiring. So, we are looking for gameplay and server developers. So if you have a background in, with using Unity, C# or background writing, server code for large social games, feel free to reach out to us, or we're looking for talent.
Do you guys need podcast hosts by any chance? No, that's really cool. It's great to see the team growing, and, man, I wish the best for Rec Room coming up.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, Nick, thank you again so much. We really do appreciate the time, and we're really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So,
well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, yeah, for all of you listening, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you all next time.